Welcome to the latest edition of First State Kopites podcast. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by some old friends and one brand new face. We've got Daz from Baltimore and Haitham from Chicago. We are recording this in Wilmington, Delaware, which, of course, now is the center of the universe, or at least for the past weekend. Very excited about that. But welcome, Enrique, for your first appearance. Good to have you on. Enrique is a member of the Delaware Supporters Club. And we'll see where we go. Sorry, 500 people trying to message me. Maybe it's about being in Wilmington, Delaware. If you're listening for the first time, you're watching for the first time, please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, podcast, Anchor, wherever, Pocket Casts, or that Anchor, wherever you get your podcasts. This week, we're going to be talking about the City game because we're recording this on November 8th. Liverpool have just drawn away at the Etihad. 1-1. So we'll be talking mostly about that. We'll reflect a little bit on Atalanta, and maybe we'll do a little bit of looking ahead at what we think will happen next. Maybe we'll even reflect on how serious Southampton are as title challengers, or maybe not. We'll see where it goes. Okay, where do I begin? I'm going to start with Haitham because I can see you first, and I don't know if you can see the configuration the same way I can. Manchester City 1-1. Takes us down to third place. What were your thoughts about the game?
I thought it was a good game. Obviously, the first half was more fluid than the second half, or I would say that the last maybe half hour of the second half was, in my own opinion, was pretty mundane. However, I enjoyed the first half. I was a little nervous. Obviously, that goes for the whole match, but it's one of those things that every time we play City, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, PTSD, I get nervous, and I'm just, the adrenaline rushes, and but again, when I see saves by Allison, for example, it just, it kind of calms me down a little bit. But I thought, we played pretty well in the beginning. We had a few chances. Again, our finishing was not up to par. But then I think about it, and of course, I expect our strikers to score goals every time they touch the ball. And in reality, that's just, not the truth. I mean, it doesn't happen that way. But overall, I guess I'm pleased with the match. I think the last time you guys hosted me, it was before the Everton match, and I think I was the only one. Maybe Timmy and I said it was going to be a draw. I'm always a glass half full person, and I think it's a really positive result. Looking at the injuries, looking at we just played Atalanta. I know we're going to be talking about it later. I think we did pretty well. I think our defense was solid. If there are any negatives, I guess, to talk about, there were a couple of times where Gini gave the ball away. He had an awesome game, by the way. But I thought 2 times, one in the first half, I believe, and the other one in the second half, I thought those were a bit critical. And I think if City was firing on all cylinders, we would have paid a hefty price for those. Yeah. Otherwise, it was a back and forth, your typical, I would say full strength Liverpool versus City match. And although, like I said, I was nervous, at the same time I enjoyed it, and I'm happy with the result.
Yeah, definitely better than losing. A lot of things in what you said there. I do think City were surprised in the first 20 minutes about our formation. And I think one of the things that changed and caused some of the Gini turnovers was they got a better handle on how to play against the whatever formation it was we were playing. Because when we were defending, It felt like it was a 4-2-4 at times, because they really sat off the Laporte and Diaz. So, what was your takeaway, Daz? What did you make of today?
I don't, it's, how I feel the night before a match is usually like a litmus test for how I feel like it's going to go. And last night I felt really calm, probably because I felt like this was almost a bit of a free hit, because I think a lot of the chat was going to be around the fact that we probably didn't have our strongest central defender in play.
Yeah.
And it's been well, it's not like it's a new chat. It's been around for a while, because VVD's been gone for 2 weeks now. But so roughly the equivalent of 400 matches. And I don't think we missed him that much, to be honest. Matip can be infuriating sometimes. He's so one-footed that he almost trips himself pulling the ball back to pass it the other direction. And then there's a couple instances where he just wellied it straight into touch on a pass. I'm like, I understand that's ring rust, but I wasn't really all that concerned. I was super excited to see what he rolled up with. I thought he was going to put that 4-2-3-1 with Jota, playing at one of the three, and it became a 4-4-2 in defense, as you were saying. So for large portions of the match, Salah was just shuttling left to right to kind of close down the passing lanes, because, like you said, Diaz and Laporte pretty much had all the time they wanted on the ball. And if you look at the first half, most of the possession that they had kind of stopped as soon as it got into the final third of the field, on our defensive third of the field. So we did a tremendous job in closing down those lanes.
Yeah.
I think for the want of a pass, the chance was lost for us today. There were numerous times where we nicked the ball and we were galloping away with all four up front, and some poor runs were made. But again, you could blame the conditions. I know that it was coming down sideways. But there was the one specifically that sticks in my mind is one with Jota, where he just flicked it to the outside of his foot. And if he had to put that in front of Salah was away. He was inside the 18-yard box, and he probably just opened up his body and shape a shot into the far corner. Same with, and I think that our decision-making was a little bit slower. We allowed City to get a foothold in the game. As you were saying, the first 20 minutes, I was like, whoa, here we go, boys. Here we go. I can handle a little bit of this. And they didn't know how to live with us. And then once they got the foothold in the game and they just started controlling the passing, and even though a lot of it was kind of quotidian, just 5-yard balls into space and then getting it back, you can't do that with City. Once they start to get their flow, they'll start picking out those passes. And it's got to be exhausting for guys that just played a grueling game in Italy, to come back on 4 days of rest and do that again against arguably one of the best passing and possession sides in the world.
Yeah.
So to go back on a kind of a longer circuitous route, I felt like today could quite easily have been our day, and I felt that before a ball was kicked. But given the result, I probably would have bitten your hand to take that out right before a 2-week break, allow us to reassess, maybe get Thiago back. Because one of the things that I talked to a mate of mine about was, like, you have to understand, I know that Haitham, you said that we had like a good, probably our strongest team out there, but we were still missing VVD, we were still missing Fabinho, we were still missing Thiago. I think Thiago helps unlock us a little bit quicker. I love Gini Wijnaldum. Sometimes I think he feels like he gets paid by the touch, though, and when he instead of shuffling it on a little bit quicker, he holds onto it, and you can just see those seams just close, like in that instance where he could be knocking it into the channels, or knocking it into that guy like Bobby who's standing between the lines, and he can turn and go. So I think today was very much in some total, I'd say like the last probably 60 minutes of the match looked like a team that was knackered. It looked like a team that's played a lot of football. The fact that Trent now could be out he's going to be out for an indeterminate period of time. I think he probably tweaked his calf a little bit. The way he went down and the way he hobbled off, I think it was his calf. Again, it's just like, this is going to be the story of the season, I think, and not just for us, but for any team that's playing in numerous competitions. It's going to be grueling, and it will eventually take a toll on the top 6 or 7 teams, I believe, and maybe even for those teams that are playing a lot more matches in a really shorter period of time. and they don't have huge and deep squads. That will definitely play into how things shake out at the end of the season.
Yeah. So again, there's a bunch of things in there, but it was interesting actually. I usually try and watch the game back before we record, and it wasn't available, but the highlights were, and there were no highlights between Trent going off and the end of the game, which probably tells us a lot about how that last 30 minutes played out. It was interesting. I thought after the match that both managers came out and said this is ridiculous in terms of number of games and no 5 subs.
I think that's what they chatted to each other about at the end of the match there, where they were giving each other the dap and the hug.
Yeah, it seems very likely. Yeah, especially as apparently Guardiola, I saw the comment, actually referenced Trent's injury as kind of now England have lost another player. Don't you want to do something about this? I thought it was. So Enrique, we've covered quite a bit around formations and injuries, and I don't know if we talked a lot about Bobby Firmino, but what was your takeaway from today?
Well, so I think like it's been said before ball was kicked, like before you told me 1-1, I would have taken it right then and there. Just at this stage in the city or in the season, I tend to look at it fairly pragmatically, and I think a draw is a good result against City, no matter what season it is. After the first 10 minutes, though, I don't think I would have taken 1-1. I was very, very confident by what I was seeing, and with the formation that we set up, that surprised me. Honestly, the way the game panned out surprised me, because I would have guessed that it would have been a cautious start and then maybe open up in the final 30 with both managers going for it. Instead, it was the complete opposite, where they were both going for it in the first half, especially us in the beginning of the first half. And then I think the halftime team talk might have been similar for both managers in that, let's not lose the season here. And you can tell the players were tired. And it was more just, I think everybody was waiting for maybe one brilliant moment to win the match. And we had a few chances. I can't think of really being threatened too much by City at any point in the second half. Any meaningful chance they had. I think part of that is also just that having Allison back in net is just such a calming presence. And but in general, I was impressed with a lot of performances. There weren't any standout performances. I think everybody did better than average. Did a good job. Yeah, I mean, you go into the break now. You have another injury. You have another, in my opinion, soft penalty call against you. It seems like the same story every week for us, but we keep rolling on.
Yeah. Once again, there were a lot of calls this weekend you could have looked at and gone,
yeah,
really? What is that? What is that about? I think the Gomez thing was one of them. I think the guy in The Guardian who wrote the summary said, there's going to be a market for defenders without arms going forward, because clearly that's the only way you're not going to give away penalties.
So Jordan Pickfords.
Yeah.
I was saying, I think the center back should start, or all defenders should just start playing in straight jackets, and then you can just eliminate any chance of. Although they'd probably still find a way to call a handball if your hands are up against your chest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did you see Joe Gomez's interview after the match?
Oh no!
He said, "I'm not going to put my arms behind my back." Because that is the most unnatural thing that you can do.
Yeah. To
try and any type of balancing or counterbalancing relies on your upper body, and specifically your arms. If they're behind your back, you can't get like that leverage to try and stop someone from getting past you, or it's just a natural reaction. You throw a leg out, one of your arms usually comes out with it. And frankly, every time I watched Albi Moreno put his hands behind his back and turn his arse in to try and stop a cross, I booked tickets to fly over there and welly him. It angered me. I'm like, it just looks, and maybe he was ahead of his time. Maybe I'm the arse. Because apparently now that's what guys have to do. Is we're going to have an entire generation of kids now that learn to defend with their arms behind their back. It's unnatural.
Yeah.
And he said he called. Sorry to interrupt, but he said he called for common sense, and I think that's what's missing. And I think my conspiracy theory, again, the Dazanon, if you will, is that these guys are absolutely trying to make a mockery of the VAR so that people will just want to bin it and they can go back to their usual impunity that they referee matches with. Because now they're doing it with technology, and it's the rest of the world is like they're having a laugh.
Yeah, we have touched on this before. I do think there are certain referees who seem to be more interested in making VAR look bad than others.
I think I always look at the other leagues too that have VAR, and they don't have nearly as much problems with it. They're able to.
They still have a few. I watch. I don't watch. Like a lot of Bundesliga games. I watched their Classico, I guess, yesterday. But I watch a lot of highlights from on ESPN Plus, Bundesliga, Serie A. And every now and then, you get one of those, especially with the penalties. And I just want to go back to what you were saying, Darren. Common sense is the key word. It just seems like they're just going by the book. Hey, if it touches the defender's arm, hand, whatever, and it's just a tad away from their body, it's a penalty, regardless, without any circumstances. I go back to the penalty against Dyer from a few weeks ago. I mean, he was not even looking. It was behind his back, and they still called it. So yeah, common sense is what's missing. I listened to Klopp, the coach, after his press conference after the match, and he was saying, the people who are making the decisions are not actually playing the game. They're not in the context of the match or whatever. So we can only go by what they decide. But it seems like we just continue to complain and talk about it, and nothing is being done. And even when they made the changes from last year to this year, I'm not sure how much footballers, like clubs and managers, player representatives or whatever were involved. I think that's the issue. I listened to the ESPN pundits, the guys, ex-players, Stephen Nicol, Craig Burley, and they keep saying, these guys, whether it's the VAR officials or the committee guys that are actually coming up with these rules, it just looks like they are not, they don't have actual football gumption. They're just your average fan like myself. I don't want to be on a committee to make decisions about anything regarding football rules and laws and all of that stuff. So I think that's the missing piece, just football common sense.
Yeah.
Back to what you said there.
Was Lee Dixon the pundit today? Was he the color guy next
He was,
to Oliver?
Yeah, he was.
He mentioned, I think he said something along exactly the same lines. Is like these guys, and I want to say there's a quote that I just read today. I think it was Shankly that said the problem with referees is they know the rules, they don't know the game.
Sounds very Shankly.
It does, right? Right to the point.
Yeah.
I think there's a very larger number of ex-players that are just, they're wondering why are there no players involved in these decisions in the VAR room. And Craig Burley specifically, I think he does you say it's average guys right now that are in the VAR room, but I think Craig Burley says something along the lines. So it takes a certain kind of personality to want to be a ref. So I think that's what it is. But I tend to agree with that. I think, they're not players at the end of the day. So
right.
I don't know the game.
Even, just the number of ex-players that are out there, I think there needs to be kind of like, I equate it to the players' unions here, like whether it's with the NFL or the NBA, you see a lot of involvement from ex-players. So something like that, just, let them have input. If you're not actually going to go and talk to the clubs that much. I'm not sure. Maybe they are talking to the clubs. I don't know when they come up with those rules.
It seems, again, we don't have the same insights about what's happening in the other leagues across Europe, but I think there is a quality issue about the refereeing as well in England, which just gets exposed even more when it comes to VAR. So quite happy to carry on talking about bad refereeing in VAR. But let's go around one more time, and I'll kind of broaden this out. Like, what else struck you this weekend? And maybe it's back to terrible refereeing decisions, or maybe it's maybe Jota could have put away a couple of those chances he had today, which on the replay did strike me as probably the better chances that we had. So I'm going to open it up. You pick your topic, but I'll go back around and start with you, Haitham.
Yeah, so two things actually from today's match against City that I did not mention, and as you know, Darren, Enrique, and yourself, Paul talked a little bit. You know, they just popped in my head. So number one, the missed penalty by De Bruyne. You know, I was reading somewhere that this was the first missed penalty, that a penalty that misses any you know, the post, the goalie, whatever, just away from the goal since Mahrez's penalty from a couple of years ago at Anfield. 2018, correct. Yeah. So it was, and you know, us playing them, you know, all those matches in between all the other teams, this was the second time. The second point is, and you know, back to the penalty, I don't know. I'm just glad he missed it. I have, you know, no feelings about it other than joy. But the second point is what Enrique was kind of talking about, which is being tired. And then you mentioned Jota's, you know, attempts where, you know, they were our best chances. You know, out of everyone, I think I noticed that he was the most tired. You know?
Yep.
And again, you know, he had an awesome, just grandiose match Wednesday, and he just looked a little tired to me. I mean, he was running around, all of that stuff, but his touch, I believe, was a little off. So those are the only two things to add to my input from earlier.
Cool. Thanks. So Daz, what else? And I say, feel free to broaden it out to the rest of the weekend, because I'm quite happy to talk about that Patrick Bamford offside, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous.
Oh my gosh!
But let me, you know.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Haitham was saying about Jota. Do you remember how long it took Robertson to get into the team? It was a while, right? And think about Jota. Jota was kind of thrown straight in. I don't think that he's come fully to grips with what it is to be a club player just yet, and the amount of yards that you have to put in. And he pulled a shift on Tuesday, and then he definitely was doing doggies all day, coming back and switching from that 4-4-2 to 4-4-2 in between passages of play when often on the ball. I think he earned his paycheck this week. He definitely did. And I think now he probably has a better idea of what it is to be a club player and what it requires. And this is what my dad said to me. The second thing about our particular match was we've kind of been nudging around the concept that maybe Bobby is not as what he was. And I love Roberto Firmino. And I think it's a little bit, it might be a bit unfair to say that he was terrible today. He wasn't his ever-loving best, but it was a couple of times that he was in tight spaces and he made things happen. But within the first 5 minutes, if he had have decided to put a boot through that ball that was put over the top and just over the top of that of Edison, I think that, but he just seems to second guess everything that he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he's convinced himself that he's not a striker anymore. That his job now is like a regista, where he's playing ball, he's putting everybody onto the end of balls, and he just needs to put his laces through the ball. And I think we said this last week as well.
Yeah.
But it's kind of sad. It's not sad. It's worrying. I'm not going to say it's pathos. I think that he has enough self-confidence. I think he's a little bit low on it right now, but I think that he probably has enough in reserve that he can call on. Maybe these next 2 weeks will help him. Sometimes it's nice to have like a little break from what you're doing and kind of reassess.
Yeah.
But to broaden it out, I saw a couple of those shouts. The Leicester side, the one that Vardy missed. I think that was another one. It's kind of on the same pattern or trajectory that look, as soon as it hit Joey's arm, I was like, oh, it's going to be a penalty, because he looked around like he'd just stolen the last cookie and been caught. He's like, oh. And then you kind of put it down and immediately looked back at the referee. I'm like, that's guilty. He's got that guilty face. Yeah. And I just knew that they were going to do it. Like, again, we shouldn't be spending this much time chewing the same earth week after week after week. And yet here we are week after week after week discussing these types of silly refereeing decisions. Like yesterday, how is Jordan Pickford still on the pitch when he straight karate kicked Harry Maguire in the guts. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
and the referee, like, again, the same thing. Nothing came of it, so he's not going to do anything about it. It's like, dude, he kicked him in the stomach.
Yeah.
He's a liability.
There's definitely
Maybe he needs a couple weeks off.
Yeah. Well, not to mention the Maguire challenge on Dina.
Yes.
The whistle had gone. That was dreadful. I was surprised Dina.
And then you get no protection from the referee because the play is offside. So you can't get sent off after the whistle or after play. It just makes no sense to me. That was a borderline red card challenge with what he did.
Yeah.
But I'd like to actually go back and discuss Gini a bit because you're right. Like what we love about Gini is that he does have the confidence to take on players in the middle of the park, and he can dribble past two players and change the scope of an attack in a few moves. But he did give it away a few times this game, and I'm wondering whether it is part of the new formation, new system where he's so used to all last season. He had Fabinho and Henderson in the midfield with him, so maybe we didn't notice it as much because if Ronaldo ever had an unsuccessful dribble, he had two amazing midfielders there to cover him and pick up that ball. Whereas now, when it's just himself and Henderson, and Ronaldo loses the ball, we're immediately exposed. Our center backs, and you saw that a couple of times. I wonder if, I'd be interested with you guys. And would you like to see Ronaldo, not be so brave in taking on those dribbles and maybe play a little bit more conservatively, or should we just continue to let him do the amazing things he's been doing for us the last 3 years?
Yeah, I think there were just random mistakes. I don't think there was a lot to, or there's a lot to read. Just from the situation, it happens, and I mean we've been watching a lot of defensive mistakes actually from our back line over, since the beginning of the season, or even if you go back to after the restart. I understand, players were kind of lackadaisical just because we had won it anyways. But, I'm not looking, and I think, I just picked Gini randomly. I mean, Salah, for example, to me, sometimes he continues to keep the ball too much instead of passing it, or look for, Mane, today, for example, Jota. So yeah, it's just, I think it's just random mistakes, although it happened twice, but I have no concerns about Gini's capabilities.
Well, Gini lives on a knife's edge. It's kind of tough because you give him the opportunity. Remember what he did against Barcelona, who was between two players, and he made them look foolish by doing that Cruyff turn. And he gets away with that a lot. So it's not just necessarily get away with it. He's a great player, and his close body control. He's got thighs like my chest. So he manages to maintain possession quite frequently. But like I said, it's a knife's edge. Because of where he loses the ball, it immediately puts us under pressure. Whereas if Salah misdribbles or miscontrols, like he has 9 or 10 men behind the ball, whereas Gini coughs that up. He's essentially got one guy and someone coming across to help cover. So I don't think the Klopp would tell him to do anything differently. And regarding if you watch the way that he plays week in, week out, he's going to be Gini. I think to kind of piggyback on that point that you made, and sorry if I'm monopolizing here, but I think that I think all four of the front four were guilty of just holding on just a little bit too long. We were so smooth and fluid against Atalanta. We were stodgy and stilted, and it was just that extra touch or a little bit slow on the turn, or we just couldn't quite get it under control. And again, the conditions, I'm sure, had a lot to do with it, because some of those little dink passes that you saw Shaq give, like it put people under pressure because it's just going to stop in however wet the grass was. It was a couple of times that I felt that Shaq did the same thing, where he tried to dink a ball inside and we could have been away, but he didn't put enough on it. And then there was one where he was facing his own goal and he just didn't put quite enough on it. And he put Joe Gomez under pressure, Matip under pressure. So yeah, I love Gini, and I know that he takes a lot of stick. And there was a whole thing about him and his going to Barcelona and his contract extension. I honestly think he's going to go because Thiago seems kind of like a natural replacement for him. And I'll be very sad to see him go, because Gini's very robust if you think about it. How often have you seen him off the pitch and with an injury? Whereas Thiago is not necessarily injury prone, but he's had a couple of big injuries that have kept him out for significant portions of time. So I'll be sad to see him go, especially after. I like him when he's angry. So if you do, just send him some shitty tweets, I guess, and just watch him get angry and just bang a couple in the top in. Maybe that's the way forward.
Yeah, I hope he looks at the ridiculous tweets, stupid fans. Oh, Gini has not done this since, blah, blah, blah. And Gini's not scoring. I'm just like, you guys don't know. It's similar to some of the talk about Bobby, too. I understand he's going through a slump, but it's been constant. Even last year, he has not scored at Anfield since the beginning of the season. I'm just like, you have no clue. Just kind of like what the coach said. We're like, if you don't understand what Bobby does, I can't explain it to you.
Okay.
No, Bobby has one goal this season, right? Am I missing one? Or he had
One goal.
Yeah, so you're right in that he's not, your normal striker. He does so much else for the team. But if there is somebody that I would like to get at least 2 games in a row scoring just to build that confidence up, because with Bobby, it really is. He's playing like a striker that is low on confidence, even though we don't expect him to score the goals for us usually. I'd like to see him get a few under his belt soon just to build that confidence up. Otherwise, I think maybe we do at this point take him out of the team for a bit, take him out of the spotlight, and I don't know maybe he has something going on in his life or whatever, but you gotta maybe just let him take a break and come back fresh.
So circling back, you asked a question about Gini, and I do think when we wrap up, we'll talk about what we see going ahead. There's a possibility that neither Gini or Bobby end up in kind of if such a thing as a first 11 when we come back, depending on kind of how we end up setting up. But I do think there's one difference between the two, and what that is that. Even though Gini had no assists last year, I think that was the stat, Klopp picked him more than any other player. And clearly that was a message he absorbed, where I do think you can see, to your point, Daz, with Firmino, there's definitely he's reacting differently when he's in situations, when he has chances, than he did a year ago or 18 months ago.
We're a long way off of no looks.
Oh yeah, boy, yeah, we are, aren't we? Yes, yeah. Let's go. Talking of no Firmino starting, let's reflect a little bit on Atalanta before we look ahead. Obviously, 5-0 win, not to be sneezed at. Reminded me a little bit of sort of 27-18, where gullible European teams set up in a very attacking way and kind of don't really get how much pace is in this team and how much ability, but which may have ended up with the 5-0 scoreline. But I'll go to you, Haitham. What was your takeaway from the Atalanta win?
I enjoyed watching the front three just exchanging positions. What I could not tell at times, not all the time. I know, Mane plays on the left, Jota, I think, started on the right, Salah through the middle. But, at times I'm just, I see Jota on the left and Mane in the middle. I love that. I love it when our front three do that kind of stuff, which, even when Bobby's there, Bobby's all over the place, but you see Mane on the left a lot and Salah on his side. So I enjoyed that. I'm also, again, very grateful to Allison. Zapata, I think, had, 3 or 4 shots on goal, and they were pretty good strikes. And then, I thought, without Allison saves, it would have been like a 5-3, 5-4 match. But I enjoyed the control. I thought, obviously we controlled the midfield, like you said. The way they set it up was pretty horrid. And it was a beautiful match to watch. I did not get to watch it live, but it was the first thing that I started watching when I woke up in the morning the next day. Obviously, it takes away a little bit from the enjoyment just because the score, kind of what happened. But it was really great.
Yeah.
To watch.
Yeah, I do think that they might actually have been a perfect opponent for Bobby Firmino, because they allowed the kind of space that he's not getting now, especially against those teams that play five at the back. Yeah. So where else do we go with this? Yeah, I have no idea how that shot would hit the inside of the post, didn't go in. That was just kind of completely weird. It was like, I don't know if you guys remember, growing up, we used to play with square goalposts rather than round ones. Felt like it was like it was like one of those.
I was applauding him when he hit that ball. I was like, wow, that's a hell of a strike. I thought for sure that it was going to nestle in the front top corner.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think to piggyback on what Haitham was saying, it was probably one of the most enjoyable matches that we've been able to watch of late, simply because you get to see, and there was a lot went into it. It wasn't just the way that they set up. It just felt like we were way more fluid in the way we passed the ball, and as Haitham was saying, the movement off the ball. Whereas today we were, maybe it was a function of the 4-4-2, I don't know, or the 4-2-4, depending which way you look at it. But it just felt it moved a lot quicker. People were finding spaces a lot better. It was a bit crisper, and because if you think about it, everyone was touting this as the most difficult game in our group.
Yep.
Because of the potential that they had going forward, and where we were without, again, with VVD always seems to pop up as the switch that they want to use against us. But it was thoroughly enjoyable. I'd probably more worried about the Atalanta game than I was about the City game today.
Yep.
And you know what the sad thing is, and don't tell anyone this, but I'd never seen Atalanta kick a ball.
You didn't see that beat Everton a couple of years ago?
Was that the one where they yelled, the guy with his kid? Was that a French team when he came down to the railing and was giving it bifters on the railings?
Oh, I think
it was against a French team.
Yeah. It was the same. It was the same year though. It was the same year where they got Atalanta. Did they beat them 5 something at home? So maybe they just thought teams from Liverpool were easy. I don't know.
Yeah, the first time I watched them, other than highlights, was the quarterfinals of the Champions League when they played PSG. I thought they really played them well until, I don't know, the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, when I felt like they got tired. But I thought they played pretty good football. They were set up properly defensively, and just out of nowhere, PSG did their thing. But yeah, it's like I said, they're now. That was probably our most difficult match in the group.
On paper.
On paper, exactly. So you never know. But the one thing I want to add, that match took me back to the 2 Porto matches at Porto in Portugal, especially the first one from 2018, I believe, when we were in the orange kit, and I think we thrashed them 5-0 or whatever. It was just it was the same fluidity. I just felt like deja vu to me.
Yeah.
My take on the Atalanta game, and I think before 2020, I might have only seen Atalanta play once, I think against City in the Champions League. And then in 2020, I've probably seen them about a dozen times now between the Champions League run they had, and they've now become a fixture in Serie A. But what I saw in that game was, you could easily see there's 2 teams that are very different fitness levels. And we talk about our players being tired, but at the same time, Atalanta's players are not used to their schedule right now. And I know they've had a couple slip-ups already in Serie A. They're not doing as well, or they haven't had the start that they were probably expecting. And they just, we were tired today. I mean, they were exhausted, especially against us. And I think they'd even just conceded 4 to Napoli before our game. So I kind of had a hunch before that Atalanta game that, this could be a high-scoring one. I thought maybe both sides would get goals, maybe like a 4-2 type of game. But yeah, I think with Atalanta, they're supposed to be the most difficult fixture in our group, but I don't think that squad is equipped to deal with the amount of matches they're playing every week now between Serie A and Champions League. So, I mean, I think honestly, I go into this second game against them very, very much.
So they're second sub 5 though in their league. We can. I was watching the Arsenal Villa match from earlier, and Ian Dark, who I love by the way, when he's commentating, it was like, well, Pep and Klopp complained about the 3 sub rule and all of that stuff, and that it should be 5, but Villa has not made any changes yet, and it was like around the 80th minute, I think, or something like that. Yeah. I'm just like, Villa is not playing anywhere else.
Get a week off, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I do think there's something about the intensity, and Atalanta might not be used to. I do wish you'd been on last week, Enrique, though, because I think we were confidently talking about how we'd put out a weakened team against Atalanta, and we'd be happy with the draw, and we'd put it all in on the City game. Clearly, we're not picking the teams or really deciding how things should play out. So
I think Klopp reads. I think Klopp watches a lot of this and reads the twaddle that we put out on social media, and he's like, "Watch
and
this."
He does the opposite.
Watch this, you dickheads.
Yeah. So we're gonna go and start talking about the future, and maybe you can turn off now because there's probably none of this will pan out. So we've got a 2 week.
You can answer that text from Biden. Like, he's trying to get a hold of you here.
So actually, it's one not asking for money. That's kind of interesting. Where am I going? Yes, looking ahead. So we got 2 weeks off. We may come back. Certainly we'll have no Van Dijk. We may not have Trent, but it's possible that we'll have Thiago and Fabinho back. Give us a lot more options in midfield. We were facing Leicester City in the first game. Last time we faced Leicester City and they were in contention. We thumped them 4-0, which is a very fine Firmino performance. We've got a European game. I can't even remember. I think it's Atalanta at home, I think, the week after that. So, I mean, plenty of time to talk about it, but clearly 5 points ahead of the other teams in the group, may give us a different philosophy on how we play Europe going forward. And if you're listening, Jurgen, you want to prove us wrong, I'm okay. So Haitham, looking ahead, new formations, Leicester City, Europe.
Yes. So Leicester City, I am not, again, just going back to being anxious and worried about the teams that we're playing. I'm not as worried as I was last year when we played them and thumped them, like you said, at Leicester. I believe with the new kid, I think Bofana, his name is.
Bofana,
yeah. Yeah. He's been playing great, and I think they play three in the back, don't they? Or is it they still?
They have. I don't know if they did today. I didn't see today's game actually.
Yeah, I didn't watch much of it, but I watched highlights and everyone was raving about him.
The final fight of the match.
Yeah. So, my worry again, just it's all about containing Vardy, because I don't know. I just feel like he always manages to sneak behind defenders. So I'd love to see just I don't know, Fabinho in there if he's healthy at that point, just to kind of like break that long pass, coming from them. But otherwise, I feel like, it's not going to be an easy match, but I don't see us, and it's at Anfield, I believe. It's at home.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I just, I feel like, it should be a good match for us, and I'm not going to be, the person who's going to say, I'm thinking a draw, whatever. No, I think we're going to win comfortably.
Yeah. I'm actually, you have me thinking now, wondering where Brazil are playing.
They do have 2 qualifiers, so it's probably games that we'd expect Bobby to play in.
Yeah.
Sorry, just looked it up.
It'll depend, I'm assuming, where those, where they're playing those games, because I think they ended up having to come back from Peru last time and arrived back like 2 days before the game when we were kicking off at 12:30. So yeah. No, I think there's every reason to feel confident about Leicester, and if, as I mentioned, Thiago's back, we'll see what happens with Trent. Then that gives us a lot of options, I think, in midfield.
Tom's comments about Trent were a little worrying. So I think he already ruled him out for England, which we probably could have all guessed. But
yeah, I'm happy if they all get ruled out for England. Quite honestly,
yeah.
Keep them in cotton wool. So Daz, looking ahead, what are your thoughts about Leicester, Europe?
Am I correct in saying Leicester was the team that ended our last unbeaten run?
You are correct. Yes. The Leicester.
I don't think so. I think it was West Ham. It was Crystal Palace. I'm sorry.
So this is about the 63 game unbeaten home record.
Oh, got it.
They just equaled in 1980 or 81.
81. Yeah, it was 81. Was
that Leicester were the team that beat us in the 64th game in that sequence.
So sometimes I'll throw the bones and read the tea leaves, and this is one of those things that always pops up, and those annoying little annoyances. Really, it's the same squad. So I'll be there with a squeaky bum, but I guess that's any given weekend or before kickoff.
Yeah.
But I've actually, by strange quirk of fate, have watched quite a few of Leicester's games this year, and I guess it could be said of Spurs too. They don't scare me as much as everyone seems to believe that their position would suggest. Again, like I'm not going to go and yuck their yum. Like they've obviously done well enough to get where they are, but this is a beautiful thing about being a Liverpool fan. Now it comes down to which one of our teams shows up. If we have the Atalanta team that shows up, they won't be able to play with us. We'll be absolutely unplayable. We'll just pick them apart. If we can close down their midfield, I think that Barnes is actually a tidy little player. Maddison's not bad. He reminds me a bit of Grealish. I think that if you stick a boot in him like hard and early, he kind of loses interest. But having said that, Leicester does worry me, because they'll have their tails up. They're foxes after all. I'll get me coat. Anyway, I think that we shouldn't take them lightly. Not that Klopp ever does. And if you listen to his press conferences, he always comes out and he's almost effusive in his praise of what other managers have done. Whether or not it's to kind of so that we don't end up on their dressing room walls, I don't know. He seems to be like masterful in his psychology.
Yeah.
But I'd worry about Atalanta. I'd say do what we said that we thought we'd do against Atalanta away from home in anticipation of the City game, and just like play the kids or play the second string.
Yeah.
Now I think about this. I don't believe that Minamino was on the bench today, was he?
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, I think you're right.
So he seems to be a person. I remember watching his head when he came off in the last match that he played. Like you could tell he just wasn't happy with himself. So yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing him get some minutes just to maybe boost his confidence a little bit. But the Atalanta game would be perfect for that. I don't think that trying to force him to play that Bobby role is where he belongs. He doesn't have any pace. And I think you said this. He's better facing the opposition's goal. He doesn't do all that well with his back to goal.
To be fair, that was a Neil Atkinson comment I was repeating, but it's. Then I went back and looked at the game that he played. I think the one against, it was at Midtjylland, and he wasn't doing anything when he was receiving the ball with his back to goal.
Because I've seen him. He knows how to strike the ball. He has a beautiful economy of energy when he strikes a ball, and it stays struck. For a wee fellow like that, he can really hit a ball.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just rambling now, but yes, I would again. I'd like to see maybe give some of the first team, quote unquote, a rest against Atalanta. I think he's going to be forced to go hard against Leicester because it's very tight at the top of the table.
Yeah.
And if he can do what he did last year, that's a marker that he puts down. It's like, look, we're still Liverpool. We might have lost a couple of fangs, but we still have one hell of a bite.
Yeah. The only counter argument on the Atalanta thing is, and I think, so I think we were thinking, oh, he can afford to, lose points because we've already won the first two games, and most teams who win the first two games qualify. And he clearly didn't let up this time against Atalanta. The only argument might be, if I get to 12 points, then I can take the last two games off. Then I don't have to worry about anything. That might be the only thing that plays into. I'm hedging our bets here, Daz, after our poor performance last week in assessing what he was going to do. But
do you know who we're playing next? After Atlanta, on the weekend.
I did not look at that. No. Maybe someone could do some quick research.
Yeah, Brighton away.
Brighton away?
Brighton away, yes.
Oh, okay. So you can put out a second string against Brighton the way they're playing, right?
They're not playing that badly. They just can't score. They're actually kind of a joy to watch.
Right.
There's somebody that I can't remember whose comment on something. Somebody said something along the lines of Brighton. If they had as many points as you would think they had from the commentators talking about how beautifully they play, right? And to be fair, I remember, I think the only games I've seen were actually the early ones against Chelsea and Man United. They only walk away with 0 points from those two games, and they probably should have 4, in all honesty.
Yeah,
that was harsh on them. But I haven't seen Brighton play too recently, so I don't know if
they continue to play the same way. They say they just can't score. They control the ball, they keep the ball, nice passing. Lallana is actually playing wonderfully for them, and I enjoy watching him actually play. But yeah, they just can't score.
The were rumors too. I think they had some dressing room bust up or something because they dropped Mape and Ryan, and I don't know the details there, but there might be something going on. I think some quote was coming out that Mape, I guess, was thinking he's much bigger than the rest of the team. So, there might be a little strike there. Then.
Yeah, there's something about that front line. I even noticed it yesterday because I watched them play. There were a few times where shoulders were just hunched after Mape kept the ball instead of passing it, and people were I think Lallana was actually one of the complainers at one point. So there's something going on, like you said, over there. I'm not sure about the incident that you talked about, but I could tell that something is not right. But then strikers, are strikers. I'm sure Salah, gets on, we know it. We've seen it on Mane's nerves and keeps the ball, all of that stuff.
I wouldn't mind seeing Mape getting hit by a Zamboni, honestly. He's such a douche.
There were people actually saying we should pick him up, by the way. I don't know if you saw some of that. Not like random Twitter people. There were people who were kind of speculating on, where we might find our next kind of acquisition from the Premier League. I think this is probably pre-Jota, but certainly he was in The Athletic had an article where he was referenced as one option. And the reason he's an option is because of the way he plays. So someone's looked at all the stats of what like Firmino and Mane do, and Mape mirrors a lot of that. So
I don't know. I have a few friends who are Arsenal fans, and he is the most hated player for them because of what he did to Leno, at the end of last season. So it was kind of like interesting just watching them complain and bitch about him.
Well, you also had a bust up of one of the Sideshow Bob players, didn't you? Was that Guendouzi, who's now been relegated to continental football somewhere? I think, didn't they get rid of him or loan him out?
I think so. Yeah, he's not around.
I don't think he's loaned out. He's still an Arsenal player. No, I'm sorry. He's playing for is it Hertha Berlin? I think it's playing in the Bundesliga, but who cares?
So that's interesting. He's not with the naughty seat with Ozil. Then they actually pushed him out. So anyway, we should probably wrap up.
Just quick, how much is Ozil pulling a week?
What's that?
How much is Ozil pulling a week now?
Is it 300K?
Yeah, 300,000. I heard. Yeah, that's what they keep saying.
And by the way, Aubameyang's playing. He might be the next latest player to get the nice big fat contract and then just take it easy after that. Probably enough Arsenal talk there, right?
So he's only scored the penalty since he got the contract, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, he has. He might have scored in the what is it, the Carabao Cup?
Oh,
and maybe Europa League.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember him scoring other than penalties.
Things that are beneath us, right?
Right.
So I'm going to close it out, and this is the one thing you saw this week that caught your eye. It could be about Liverpool, could be about something else. I know there were quite a few interesting articles in the Athletic this week. If you read that, so I'll reference those if we run short of ideas. So Haitham, what's one takeaway from this week, possibly about the Reds?
That is easy. I watched the Liverpool FC Women goal from today by number 10, Brinsala. It was a peach. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend seeing it. She cut from the left, went through a player. I think they were playing Sheffield United, and went around the player, and then there was another player, and she nutmegged her and shot it right across the goal. It was beautiful. So that's what I guess my highlight for the day. What I've seen this past week.
How did Liverpool Women do today?
They won. That was the winning goal.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm never sure when it's on, because the last one I saw was them beating Manchester United, which of course was really wonderful. If you saw that in the Continental Cup.
Yeah, I follow them on Twitter, so I see when they're playing highlights. I think a lot of matches get shown actually on LFC TV too.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so I follow them. A couple of really, really, really good players. Just fun to watch.
Yeah, good stuff. Good to see them winning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Daz, what was the one thing you noticed this week?
Probably Pep Guardiola's choice of outerwear. It's lashing down cats and dogs, and he's wearing knitwear. I think that I read Ben Johnson's little bit afterwards, and he says he'll probably take it off and it'll hit the floor like a soggy Weetabix. I was getting very strong Piccolo vibes from him, from all those, anyone that hasn't ever watched Dragon Ball Z Turn Away Now, but like when he took that thing off and dropped it on the floor, he must have had water bottles and balls bouncing off of the floor. It's he never ceases to amaze me. Maybe it's because he's bald and he knows that the water just runs off his head, so he doesn't really feel like the sodden nature of hair. But yeah, son, that's knitwear. And I know that they were giving him down the banks from the commentary box as well. I think they mentioned it 3 or 4 times. Lee Dixon couldn't believe it.
Oh, I missed that. Okay. Well, this is what this segment's for. Thank you. Got to go back and look at that.
Not as bad as what's his name, Nagelsmann suit from a couple of weeks ago. That was awful.
Oh, the one at the Man United game.
Yeah. Was it? Yes.
Where he's supposed to be like an English. He said he was going to dress up in something very English and like him.
It was awful. I don't know what he was thinking, but
Yeah, probably not wearing that again after that result. Yeah. So Enrique, one thing you saw this week that caught your eye?
Well, non-Liverpool first. I'm not worried about Leicester. Southampton are top of the table after December. Maybe I'll begin to be worried about them. I actually have a little worry about Spurs because they're doing this thing lately where the annoying habit of winning while playing badly. I think West Brom today, Brighton the last game, and they're squeaking out these results. Luckily for us, I believe they play City next. If not next, it's the game after. So, hopefully they take points off each other. I don't know how that game's gonna go, but I think our games against Spurs may be some big games to look forward to this season. But as far as our team is concerned, I thought Henderson was spectacular again. The amount of times he just, fully committed to every tackle. He goes in, and it's just watching the team with Henderson is a whole different thing than watching it without Henderson. And then I'm going to also give a shout out to Matip, who he had a few mistakes, but at no point would I have guessed that he had missed as much of the season as he has. He seemed he didn't panic. You know, anytime he made a mistake, he didn't panic afterwards. He was still able to, you know, calmly control his game after. So
Awesome. Thank you, Enrique. So I'll just end on maybe a couple of things. I mentioned there were a few interesting pieces in the Athletic this week. If you haven't checked out the story, the Harvey Elliott one about how he's ripping up trees at Blackburn Rovers this season, then that's worth a read. Definitely very exciting for the future. I saw that the Atalanta put up a sign, and I wish I'd had the exact quote, but it was basically "Welcome Reds. We're so proud to have you visit us," or words to that effect, which I thought was just. You know, in these days of sort of bias and partisanship everywhere, just felt very nice. But the thing I wanted to end on was the really sad story of Mamadou Sakho that they wrote about in the Athletic this week. And you know, the Liverpool angle is what someone said that after the thing was announced, the most common thing referred to in all of the notes was that Liverpool should have won the Europa League in 2016 because he should have been playing, and the goal Sevilla scored came down the left side, which is, you know, one angle. But the other was just like his life has been wrecked by that that the claim about the drug taking. You know, it's, you know, who knows whether he'd still have been with us, but there's much more chance of him having been with us had he not had that, you know, allegation against him. And now, you know, it doesn't seem like he's not consistent, certainly even for Crystal Palace, which is you know, and he's now 30. So, you know, one imagines it's not like he's got a lot of time left to end up playing at the top level. Just thought that was such a really sad story of what could have been for somebody, you know, and none of it was really, you know, his fault, it turns out.
Before we go, one thing that I wanted to talk about real quick was when you said non-partisan aspect of sport and how it can bring us together. Did you see the sign that Everton put up before their match against United?
The fans, right?
Yeah.
Tell us what it said.
I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically say, "Get in, Marcus, for all the hard work that you put in trying to put food on kids' tables." And I was like, that choked me up a little bit just to see that, because it makes it that made such a big deal to so many people's lives, and especially on Merseyside. And then today he sent something back and said, "Thank you so much for that. You know, like I know what you guys do for kids in need as well." So it's just really heartening to see that despite any animosity that may happen between the entities themselves, it's just the fact that these people care enough to be able to mention humanity, which is huge.
There was the other sign too, the banner, but we're not going to talk about today. But I thought it was distasteful. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
I didn't.
No.
So now we can't leave it there, right? It was like, well,
Be continued.
It was kind of similar, the same context. It had to do with our elections, but it was similar to the banner that flew over that Burnley match last season. So the same concept.
Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter.
It was about our, you know, how it's been stolen, basically. Our election. So
if you're stuck with this long, you can go Google it if you are really of a mind to Google it, because it doesn't sound like it's probably worth pursuing.
Yeah,
I do want to thank everyone. Haitham, Daz, Enrique, thanks so much for joining us this week on First Day Kopites podcast. Easy for me to say. It's been great to have you on. Well, 2-week international break coming up. Hopefully we'll be able to survive that 2 weeks somehow or other. Okay. Bye everyone.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.